Hello there, Internet. How are you today? So it was back in August, it was in the summertime, and I see this headline that says, Jamie Clayton has been cast in the L Word sequel, and I was like, what the fuck? There's an L Word sequel coming out. Apparently it was announced like 2 years ago, but I just found out about it a couple of months ago. There have since been a few trailers that have come out, and I've noticed some like common themes in the comment section of the trailers. I want XYZ character from the original back. Bet and Tina have broken up. Oh no. I'm guessing that this couple from Generation Q, they're gonna be the new Bet and Tina. So we'll see if they end up breaking up by the end of the season, and they'll do the will they won't they thing for the rest of the show. Some people praise the diversity of the new cast. I'm personally very excited by the new cast. Still sad about Dana dying. You know, Dana dying was very sad. It was devastating. I might have cried or something. But there was a storyline in the L Word, even like 10 years after I watched it, I would just like start foaming at the mouth. I'd be so pissed off that it happened. You can leave in the comment section below what storyline you think that is, because there was we can't talk about it in this video because I need to go on and talk about other subjects. Oh yeah, and who killed Jenny? Obviously it was Bet who killed Jenny. Why would you even ask who killed Jenny? Don't you remember when Bet read Les Girls and she was like, fuck you, Jenny, fuck you, Jenny.
You're dead meat. You're just dead fucking meat, Jenny Schechter.
And she was right. And you know, revenge is best served cold, and I think that Bet Porter knows that, you know? Weeks after I found out about the L Word coming back, I also learned that Queer as Folk was coming back. The L Word is coming back as a sequel, so old cast members will return as their old characters from the original. We're just gonna pick up after 10 years and go from there. There's gonna be another American version of Queer as Folk and a French version, and it's gonna be based off of the original British miniseries with different casts and characters that are based off of those characters and those storylines, but hopefully doing something new. Interesting comments in the articles that I read. Yeah, I would be that person who says, why the fuck do you need to remake everything? Just make your own goddamn TV shows. But the last time I said something along those lines, I ended up watching the same TV show in 7 different languages. So it would be completely hypocritical for me to make that argument now. I guess one thing that I'm looking forward to with that one, it's going to be written by Stephen Dunn, who directed the movie Closet Monster, and I thought that Closet Monster was a good movie. The L Word Generation Q, the showrunner is Marja-Lewis Ryan. I'm not very familiar with her work. I've only seen one of her movies, but goddamn, it was a really, really, really good movie. So my thing with adaptations and remakes and all of that shit is I'm not interested in seeing the exact same thing as the original, because if I wanted to see the exact same thing as the original, I would just go ahead and I would watch the original. I'm gonna turn on a light. It's a little dark in here. Okay, that's better. So with the French version, it says it will not be a strict adaptation of the characters and intrigues of the Channel 4 series, which is good. It's been 20 years. Things are different now. As for the pitch, the only thing I can tell you is that there will be heroes, heroines, and true diversity. I don't know what true diversity is, but I feel like there wasn't a lot of diversity in the original miniseries as well as the American version. We have this group of white gay men and then some white lesbians, and then there's this one black friend off to the side.
You don't know anything because you're straight, right? You're part of the system, right? You're part of the fascist heterosexual orthodoxy.
I'm black and I'm a girl. Try that for a week.
The original Queer as Folk was set in Manchester, England in 1999. I looked at the census data and it was 88% white and like 1.5% black or something like that. So that's reflective of the demographics, so that's okay. The American version was set in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was 2/3 white at that time and about 1/4 of the population was black. Pretty much everyone was white except for Justin's black friend. Oh right, and one of the lesbians was Jewish, so there's that. And that show ran for about 5 seasons. We have a lot of characters coming in and out throughout those 5 seasons. I only remember just the one black friend. But I will say, Sex and the City came out at around the same time, and I think there's only 2 people of color in Sex and the City who last longer than an episode, so... Contrary to that, I remember the summer before my senior year in high school, one of the girls at my summer camp, I never talked to her before, but I overheard her conversation where she said that she learned all of this sign language from the L word, and her friend was like, I thought that the L word was about lesbians, you know, because you can only be one minority at a time. You can't be deaf and a lesbian. So I just like walked into that conversation having never talked to these 2 people before, and I was like, but one of those lesbians is deaf. She was very happy to have found somebody who also watches the L word, and that's something that we were able to bond over, that we watched the L word, and it was great. And anyway, Marlee Matlin's character, who played Jodie, she was like the first deaf lesbian on a TV show, so that's great. And also in the pilot episode, we have this very interesting development with Bette and Tina. They are an interracial couple. They're trying to have a baby. Their first sperm donor, his swimmers weren't really swimming, so they try to find some other sperm donors. And Bette found somebody perfect, sets up a time for Tina to meet him and then drive him over to the cryo bank where he can make his deposit. But she left out an important detail for Tina.
Did Bette not tell you I was black?
No, not at all. She didn't not tell me because it doesn't matter either way, right?
I can't answer that for you.
No.
Reasons why I liked this. 1, Tina reminds me of my mom. She reminds me of a lot of white people that I've encountered. I don't see color unless there's a little bit too much color where I wasn't expecting to see any color, and now it's making me uncomfortable. So I do not like this colorblind approach for many reasons. 1, it's very passive. Being anti-racist, we need to be proactive in our approach. And also the assumption that by acknowledging that color is there, by acknowledging differences in diversity, then we're going to automatically discriminate, and it's not like a beautiful and wonderful thing where we can recognize that we all have different experiences and that this is our great strength. It's not a weakness, but also it doesn't really take into account our subconscious. You are not as colorblind as you say you are. Tina was taken aback by her reaction because, you know, that was a very subconscious thought where this isn't supposed to matter to me. I'm not supposed to be put off by this. I'm not supposed to be scared by this, but God damn it, she's scared. She's scared. She doesn't know what to do, and she thinks that Bette put her in a fucking awkward position.
You put me in a fucking awkward position. How could you not tell me that Mark Sallinwood is black?
The issue isn't she doesn't want the sperm donor to be black because she has a problem with black people. No, the issue here is that this kid is already going to be different because this kid is already going to have 2 mommies. And then on top of that, it's going to be biracial. Can't be 2 minorities at the same time. That's a lot of otherness to put on a child. And then Bette's just looking at Tina like, you know, you're othering me in this conversation right now because Bette is biracial. Bette is also a lesbian, and she has to be both at the same time. I can understand from Bette's perspective that's really upsetting for her to hear that she's not ready to have a child with you who shares your heritage. I just love this because I'd never seen this before on television, to be honest. Like, I wasn't seeing a discussion like this happening on Sex and the City or on Friends or on Will and Grace or any other show that I was watching back in 2004. That's not to say that I'm on board with everything race-wise that the show did. One of the issues that Tina brought up in the pilot episode was that she doesn't feel qualified to be the mother of a child who's half African American because she doesn't understand that experience. And then that's brought up again at the end of season 3 after Bette and Tina have split up and Bette wants full custody of their child, Angelica, and her reasoning for that is that Tina is white and she doesn't understand what it's like to be mixed. And like, ugh, that's such a shitty thing to do. Like, you're using your kid's race as a weapon against your ex. And yeah, I just didn't like the writing there. It was like, let me take this and use it for shock value. You could go down the list, like, why didn't Carmen have the same ethnicity as the actress who played her. Also in season 1, there's this discussion kind of on colorism. Bet and Tina mentioned that they wanted to adopt first, but then there aren't a lot of pregnant people who want to give their babies to lesbian couples, so that's why they decided to inseminate Tina instead. And then this woman from their group therapy session was like, well, that's just if you only want white babies. I have this book. I was assigned to read this in college. It's one of the books I was assigned to read that I actually did fucking read. There's this chapter that's on Black families. Right here it says that light-skinned babies tend to get adopted first, and that 40% of Black couples wanting to adopt specifically request children who are light-skinned. So that's really disturbing. But my issue with this scene specifically is that this character Yolanda is just this unreasonably angry Black woman. She's finding some random reason to be angry at Bet for like denying her Black heritage or whatever the fuck. They made Yolanda somebody who was impossible to sympathize with because all of her arguments, all of her reasons for attacking Bet were completely wrong, and we all knew that that was wrong because we already knew Bet. She mentioned something about, oh, well, you probably only want white babies. Well, we know for a fact that that's not true, at least not where Bet's concerned. She had an African-American donor who was several shades darker than her. She doesn't go out of her way to have the lightest skinned baby. Colorism is a thing. Light skin privilege is a thing. It's not this thing that people like Yolanda make up just so that they have an excuse to get angry. And I really wish that discussions on colorism, it didn't have to be portrayed in this way where there's like this angry, dark-skinned Black woman who's attacking the lighter-skinned woman for not being Black enough. Like, it doesn't have to be portrayed in that way, but that's often how colorism is portrayed in the media. Maybe that's something that we can bring up in the sequel series. So little baby Angelica is no longer a baby. She is a teenager. It looks like she is going to be on the show. I've seen her in the trailers. So I don't know if we're going to deal with biracial identity, but if we do, please do not make any dark-skinned Black people into bullies. Please don't do that. So I don't know where we're going to go with that. In terms of things that we're going to improve in this new sequel series, I read an interview with Marja-Lewis Ryan on The Hollywood Reporter. She said that she's going to have more than one trans character, and all trans characters will be portrayed by trans actors. So when I saw the trailers, I recognized Brian Michael Smith from the Variety Transgender in Hollywood panel. And he said this about the original L Word.
The L Word when I was in college, and I was like, well, this, and I think it was the Max character. I was like, well, that's not even what this experience is. So as a Black trans masculine person, I was like, there's no way I can act. I even had a teacher in college tell me that, you know, you can't act. If you're not going to do female roles, then you can't act.
Nice to see that there's going to be improvement in that area and that he's going to be a part of this L Word. Anyway, back to that interview in The Hollywood Reporter. I really like this part about family, and I think it really brings up why we need something like the L Word, something like Queer as Folk to come back. As a gay kid, you're missing something when you're born into a heterosexual family. There's something that we long for, and that's why the show meant so much to me, because I got to see what my family could look like. That's the thing I love the most. Anytime all the characters were on screen together, it would give me this giddy feeling, even if nothing was really happening. Just having them all close was important to me, and very important to my formative understanding of what lesbians could look like. I knew that I wanted to sleep with women. I didn't have an understanding that I needed them in this other way as friends. I needed to be held by them. That's one thing I'm excited to bring back, because that for me is a thing that's really missing from television. There are way more queer characters now than there were then. We don't get to see this group, and that's huge for me. So I watched Queer as Folk before I watched the L Word. Before I watched Queer as Folk, the only gay people I had seen on TV were Will and Jack from Will and Grace, Stanford from Sex and the City, and Carol and Susan from Friends. Nowadays, there are a lot more gay characters, a lot more gay romances, but I think most of their friends are usually straight, and the only other gay people that they meet are like the the one person that they're gonna date and like spend the rest of their life with. So they don't really have a group of gay friends. They don't have a gay community. They don't usually go to Pride or be involved in the community in any sort of way. And I really liked on the L Word that we got to explore the culture. We went on Olivia cruises and we saw the older, wiser lesbians. But even the idea of like Alice's chart, for example.
Behold the chart, an atlas of highways connecting all kinds of love, some long-lasting, some lasting only the night.
You could just name any random lesbian who happened to live in Los Angeles, and Alice would know who this woman is, who are all the women that she slept with, all of the women that her exes have slept with, and she's able to map out their whole sexual history and link that to her. It's amazing.
So the point is we're all connected, see?
The L Word took the unique anthropology of women who love women and put it on a map.
You don't get to see that in a lot of other shows because gay people only know like one other gay person who they're dating. Having multiple gay characters in a show also meant that you can deal with a variety of different issues. I remember hearing that Will and Grace was very groundbreaking back in 1998 because it had two main characters that were gay instead of just like the token one character, and that allowed you to see that there was diversity within the gay community. It's not just the one character who has to carry the burden of portraying an entire community because no one character can do that anyway. So the more characters you have and the more diverse that group of characters is, then that burden is shared across the many characters. I'm not making much sense, but do you know what I mean? But one of the issues with Will and Grace that was definitely addressed with queer as folk as well as with the L Word. You see Grace in bed with guys all of the time, and I swear to God, I saw Will and Grace make out with each other more often than I saw Will kiss another guy. There was even this storyline in Will and Grace where the characters were all watching a show just to see a gay kiss. Jack had this line that I felt was very on point. By not showing that kiss, they're saying that the way that I live my life is offensive. And they did not show the gay characters kissing, not just with Will and Grace, but you didn't see Carol and Susan kiss, and we saw them get married. When it comes to diversity, there's a very strict kind of quota. You can't have too many characters who are other, and they can't be other in more than one way. You can only do diversity in very small doses, and it has to be really watered down. And when you have gay characters, they have to be written in the most inoffensive way. It can't be something that's too scary for straight people. Some things that are offensive to straight people, gay sex. The number one question was always, but what will straight people think? We can't do that. What will straight people think? That confines the characters into this very tiny little box. So I understand with queer as folk, it's like, fuck this fucking box. And part of being minority in general, I think sometimes is walking on this tightrope of respectability. People who are in the dominant group, they get to walk on land. They get to stumble and fall and mess up and nobody cares. But if you mess up, that's not cool. So I can understand a character like Brian Kinney in that context. As a gay man, he's been expected to walk on this tightrope, and Brian Kinney made a decision to jump the fuck off of that tightrope, set it on fire, say fuck this, I'm not gonna apologize for getting off of that tightrope. And he made a big deal about, oh, I'm unapologetic, that's the kind of person that I am. I don't apologize, I don't feel guilty, I just live my life the way I want to. And that's all well and good. He does not need to apologize for getting the fuck off of that tightrope because nobody should have to live their life in that way. He's not operating on these really rigid standards that were imposed upon him as a gay man. He's not really operating on any loose or rigid or any standards of decent behavior sometimes. He was a really toxic and horrible person. Okay, there's something that matters to me about the Queer as Folk remake more than the whole diversity issue. Like, yeah, I do care about them bringing in more diversity. I wonder if we're gonna get more than 2 letters in the acronym. The L word, Generation Q, they're gonna do like all of the fucking letters that they can think of.
From the L to the Q.
And I do wonder if the Brian or Stuart Allen Jones character, if they're still gonna be like a white, cisgender, able-bodied gay man in this new version, because I feel like the tightrope is probably lowered a lot since 1999 or 2000. Probably indistinguishable from the rest of the ground. You can tell me what you think on that. But anyway, more important. So, this character was 29 years old. 29 years old. In the British series, he sleeps with somebody who's about half his age. That shit is illegal. Nathan was 15 years old. The age of consent in the UK is 16 years old. Now, I'm glad that with the American version, they at least aged him up and he was 17. In Pennsylvania, which is where the American version is set, the age of consent is 17.
Kind of young, aren't you? Well, I was 14 my first time.
That's really young.
With my gym teacher.
I bet he was some old perv.
I like how even Justin is creeped out by this. Yes, 14 is really young. Stuart Allen Jones was 12. 12. So 14 is definitely better than 12, but 14 is still 14, and it was with an older man.
That old perv was probably the same age that I am now.
Of course he was the same age that Brian is now. Of course he was. Here's this book that my brother got for me on my 17th birthday. So right here it's talking about casting. So they didn't have an actor for Justin, but then they found Randy Harrison's audition tapes and they thought they found the perfect actor to play Justin. They knew that they had found a wonderful actor, but were concerned that he looked a little too much like a teenager. It was important that the actor be at least 18 years old. When the producers checked his resume and saw that he had graduated from college, it eased some of their concerns. We were terrified because he was awfully young, Ron admits. Brian was going to become involved with a guy who was several years younger than himself and a teenager in high school. We were scared because Randy was really young. He was not as young in real life as he looks. So Randy Harrison was maybe like 22, 23, and his character was 17. I think it's very telling that they were very worried when they thought that he was a teenager. I don't get it. If you are uncomfortable with casting a teenager to play this character, then really ask yourself, why does this character need to be a teenager to begin with? If you would never in a million years consider casting a 17-year-old to play a 17-year-old, maybe you should age the character up. Why the fuck does he need to be in high school? If you want him to still live with his parents, be in the closet, have that tension going on, he could be in university. Maybe he's financially dependent on his parents because they pay for university tuition, something like that. I don't understand why he needs to be that young. So I think that this character should be at least 18. Because I highly, highly, highly doubt that the French version or the new American version would even consider hiring an actor who was under the age of 18. So that's why I appreciated how on the L Word most of the characters were adults. I think that the youngest of the main characters was like 25 years old. So I'll definitely be watching the L Word. I am planning on going to Jolene's, and I really, really like that this time around I'm over the age of 21 and I can go to a viewing party, and even though I don't really have friends that I can watch with, I can watch with a bunch of strangers in a bar. Are you gonna watch Queer as Folk? Are you gonna watch the L Word? Yes, no, maybe. And if it's a maybe, what are your conditions? Under what conditions will you watch these shows?